Thank you. Well, first, thanks for having me here. The only thing I like better than being able to drink as a speaker is that it probably means your audience is drunk and the bar is low. We'll see how we do on that. This is largely going to be an interactive tour of my desktop because I didn't really prepare as much as I would like. I've been working in climate and energy for a long time, and a long time ago I gave a talk at the Long Now Foundation here on energy that was really good and really fun, and my thinking has changed. The blue bit in the middle called infrastructure is how my thinking changed in the last 8 years, and that's really going to be the theme of this talk, but I'm only going to get there at the last minute. Roughly. All right, so here's the problem. Because this is pulled from the web at random, you can't see what's going on. This is 1985. This is 2010. This is global energy use. Green is oil, gray is coal, red is renewables, but it's mostly, oh no, this red is natural gas. We're obviously not doing that well. This red is renewables. Yeah. The blue one is renewables too. It's hydroelectricity, but because we've done, we kind of put it in different categories, so it's a little bit better than that. I don't know what's at the bottom, so just look at the top one. So the point here is we use a ton of energy. The majority is fossil fuels, and that collides horribly with this problem. You can tell that this was a paper in Nature because it's a really complicated graph. This was actually a very famous in climate circles graph because we used to think about, if you reduce to this level of CO2 production, what temperature do we get? But this was when we started thinking about how much carbon can you emit before you stop completely, and how does that finish up? It's known as the trillion ton problem or something. Anyway, basically if we keep burning up here, you have to stop at some point to hit nominally around 450 ppm peak there, and then it gives you the probability of staying below 2 degrees. So very likely, more likely than not, less likely, super unlikely, and catastrophe. We're still tracking well towards catastrophe in terms of climate, and that's the most dramatic, horrible thing that I want to say. I'm really set myself the challenge of figuring out how to talk positively about climate change because I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, so you're obliged to. All right, so here's another way of looking at how the world uses and produces energy. We use grossly 18 terawatts. A huge amount is in plants because that's what we eat and grow and do all those things, and it doesn't really get counted in the typical statistics. Then there's oil, coal, gas, not doing so well. This is old data, namely 2007, so we doubled or tripled solar from, tiny amounts. So we're actually doing really well on solar. We're also doing really well on wind, but we're starting from super low baseline. This is how we use it. I'm going to skip this and come back to it. Roughly, we use 1/3 of our energy for moving ourselves around, 1/3 for housing ourselves, and 1/3 for industry, and I'll come back to that at the end of the talk. So here's if you want the one slide of renewable energy. This is the only slide you ever need to see, so memorize it. This big yellow thing, this is energy coming in from outer space, from our sun. It gives us 85,000 terawatts of solar energy hits the upper atmosphere. That sounds great because 85,000 is bigger than 18. We lose, some of it's reflected out. A lot of it is absorbed in the atmosphere, 31,000. Roughly 3,600 terawatts of what's the energy absorbed in the atmosphere becomes wind. About 400 terawatts becomes wind that's close enough to the Earth to capture, and less than that in the low, really close to the Earth. This is super interesting to me. If you collected every single raindrop that fell on every mountain and ran it through a hydroelectric facility, you'd only get 7 terawatts, or about 1/3 of our consumption. So hydro is great, but if you remember that big slice of that original thing, we're already doing a ton of it. There's not that much energy. If you burn a quarter of all photosynthetic activity, that's about what humanity would need. So biofuels are good, don't use it all. If you flattened every single wave on every coastline in the world, which would be tragic because I'm a surfer, you only get a sixth of the power of humanity. Anyway, in summary, go big on solar, go slightly less big but still enormous on wind, and then do whatever you can on the other stuff as well, if you want to go renewable. This was a project I started in 2006 to go big on wind power. This is Makani Power. This is why it all works. Famously, they say for every equation you show in a presentation, you lose half the audience. I'm going to show 5 equations. What portion of the audience will still be here when I get done? No one's ever done the study on what portion of the audience you lose if you give them that math problem. We really are making it up as we go along today. So I'm not allowed to show brand new videos of Makani because it's now top secret project of Alphabet. Oh, no, that's not view big screen. Does anyone know how to maximize screen on? Ooh, thank you, whoever said Control F. My wife says Control F to me all the time. There's a wonderful young woman called Andrea Dunlap. She is the archivist at Makani, and she's been taking video and photos of everything we've been doing for about 7 years, doing an incredible job, and made all this footage. This is annually she makes the bloopers video. This was the successful part of that video 2 years ago. This is a 30 kilowatt wing. What we're showing here is the first fully autonomous flight demonstrating all modes of flight. So what we're going to do, instead of building a big stick that gets blown over by the wind and try to make the stick bigger and bigger and bigger until it doesn't get blown over and collect energy, is we're going to fly a kite on a really thin piece of string instead. That's what the equation said, use strings, not towers. So then you fly the wing up. Once you get up, you turn it into a constant barrel roll, and you turn it off and it stops being a quadcopter. Now it's a kite flying in this circle, and you back drive the turbines and you send energy down the string at thousands of volts. And it looks like this is going to make electricity at about half of the cost of existing wind, which will mean it'll be competitive or beat without subsidy coal and natural gas. The video I want to show you is the new wing they have, which is about twice the length of this room. So it's giant. It's a sort of 600 to 800 kilowatt machine. It is at a top secret location in Alameda. Turns out hiding an 80 or 100 foot long wing is really impossible when it's stored outside near battleships. And if you go one day this week, you'll see something amazing. So there you go. I didn't reveal anything. Anyway, this was all autonomous. Engineers just watched it happen. They didn't do anything. The robots did it, and then it lands itself. So this was the first suggestion that you can do all of the components required to make cheap renewable energy. It is really super exciting, and actually the team there is incredible. Google has been hugely supportive. All jokes aside, this is a wonderful thing. So that's Makani. Let's see. Count the equations. I left Makani to spend more time with my family. Some of you knows what that means. And I decided to work on solar energy. And this was a picture we drew years ago. How do you make really cheap heliostats to track the sun effectively? So you think of visually solar energy as rigid PV cells on your rooftop. Actually, about 80% of photovoltaics are now industrial and commercial applications where you track the sun because you get 20 to 40% more power by following the sun across the sky. This is an artist called Ned Kahn, lives in Sebastopol. He had the idea first, and he covers horrible parking stations with it and makes really beautiful looking things, except they just get blown about by the wind. This is why it's a really good idea and means you'll reduce the cost of tracking by about 80%. And then this is again, I'm going to show you an old video. So this is roughly 2 years old. Here we go, play, Apple F. That is a 3-litre soda bottle. It's made out of PET. This is a homemade blow molding jig, which was the very first idea we had. Let's try blow molding soda bottles. If you want to get to scale with solar, you need to make so many of these things. You've got to be, from the start, figure out how to make them cheaply. That was obviously the magic of Martha Stewart cooking. What we actually did was we heated it up, we blew high-pressure air into it, and then we cooled it down inside the dirty water of the other lab swimming pool, namely our water jet. And then the first time we turned it on, by doing differential pressure between these things, turns out these shapes are super important. You can track the sun with better than 1 degree precision. You probably don't believe it watching that. That was the first day we turned it on. But if you watch this one, here it is. So this is pretty amazing. You eliminate 2 gearboxes, you eliminate servos, you eliminate all the electronics just by providing pressure. And the good news is you can do it open loop. We can control this very, very accurately using 4 soda bottles. So what I can't show you, but I'm really proud of, is we installed our first 10 kilowatts yesterday. And there's a wonderful woman called Layla Madrone who's running that project. Many of you might know. She's killing it, and we're actually should be multiple megawatts in the ground next year. We're secretly in a race to produce more power faster than Makani, but don't tell anyone. All right, we're working on another energy project. Basically, natural gas is a very clean fuel. When you burn it, it only produces about half as much CO2 per mile traveled as oil and gasoline. Electric cars are a tremendous idea. I'm in no way critical. We want as many of them as you can, but they're not going to solve all the transportation problems, so you want better fossil fuels to run transportation. Problem with natural gas is better demonstrated by the video I'm about to show you than what I would otherwise say. Here it is. I'm going to do the voiceover because we don't have audio. This is your car. You want to have a dog to put in your car. You'd prefer to run your car on natural gas. This is normally narrated by a charming guy from Maine with a Mainer accent. All right, but like former... Oh, we didn't start at the beginning of the video. Okay, so here you go. You got a dog. If you put natural gas tanks in the back, then your dog can't be inside your car. If your dog can't be inside your car, you're like a former president or presidential candidate. The problem with tanks is round peg, square holes. Doesn't work. We had an idea. This is actually not how it happened. We should make intestines. And then, yeah. But if I said Hamiltonian curves and space-filling math, you'd all cross your eyes. Yes, woo! Actually, at Autodesk, there's a lot of people. Graph theory. Graph theory solves a lot of problems, including storing natural gas. Anyway, now your dog fits, and the sun is better, and the sky is cleaner. That's why that one works. 3 equations. So they're things I do on a day-to-day basis. That's all supply side, and mostly supply side, and I guess with the last one, sort of changing infrastructure of energy production and what fuels we use for what. I'm also hugely interested in this question, so how much energy do we each use in our lives? I'm now going to show you 8-year-old slides. This was my thinking on this matter 8 years ago. So I counted everything in watts. Watts is the amount of power you use all the time. So those LEDs that are blinding me are using 1,000 watts. Probably not 100 watts. I'm burning 100 watts to stand here all the time. So for all of my flying that I did in 2008, if you divided all the fuel burnt in that year divided by the number of seconds in the year, it was 7,500 watts. So I converted every activity, sort of the collective activity, into a constant power unit. So there's all my flights for 2007. That's every single mile I drove in the country. This was my energy consumption before I had children. Let me tell you how much that changes things. And you can see that we're really weird. So this is our daily showers, our cooking, those 2 colors, heating. So you can see, in our 100-year-old Victorian in San Francisco, it's all thermal load, right? We don't have a television, so everything else is like spare change, electric toothbrushes and 20-watt laptops. That's old data, don't worry about it. This is the greatest lie I've ever told. I used to tell people that I only drank 2 glasses of wine a day. I switched to beer, obviously. This estimate for farming is terrible. It's way higher. We can come back to this anyway. So even your food uses significant amounts of energy. Across the entire economy, all of agriculture and getting all the food to tables is about 15% of energy. This is just the oil, the PG&E bill, my tax-paying portion of the PG&E bill for the US government. So this doesn't include the embodied energy of building all of the battleships. Anyway, so your taxes use money. This is every single thing that I own because no one can read this. These are things like aluminum foil and underwear and toothpicks and bookshelves and everything. Obviously, the big heavy things in your life use a lot of energy. Shocking things. We no longer buy newspapers. Well, it almost ended in divorce. We no longer get newspapers on Monday through Saturday. We get the Sunday New York Times. I got rid of all my boats. We gave the Honda Insight away. Anyway, so if you do all of that 8 or 10 in math, you can come up with this unbelievably high detail picture of your whole life. And I can put into context this round trip from Oakland to OGG, I don't know where that is, to Honolulu to Oakland. That one flight in that 1 year, so that was the holiday in Hawaii, is roughly equivalent to the energy cost of my healthcare, is roughly equivalent to my per capita use of electricity in my office. So anyway, you could really, at unbelievable detail, look at how you use energy in your life, and I think this is exactly wrong. Actually, it's really very, very and extremely right, but it's not a useful way to think about energy. And I'm going to come back to this point. I have no idea how I'm tracking on time for this talk, and if you're going to let me go over time, sweet. I'm for those who aren't in this room, I'm hypnotizing the timekeeper. All right, so if you go back to me, it's all about me. 18,000 watts was my personal energy use in 2007. Am I a good or bad person? This is the per capita energy use of everyone in the country. Alaskans are the worst, but it's cold. Wyoming's the worst, but it's cold. Louisiana is the worst. Oh, but wait, Louisiana is not cold. It's hot. Anyway, what I really wanted to make with that point, although you guys are too smart and you said it's hot, is these are the energy producing states. So when you collect the statistics, the energy flows over their lines. So they're being hugely penalized. And these planet fucking hypocrites who live in New York, I don't know, where's New York? It's on here, it's like super low down. Here it is, second to last. They always stand up and say, but we're so efficient. It's a fucking lie. They're importing, there's a giant pipe of oil coming from New Jersey feeding New York and they don't count it on their bill. Makes me angry. Reached the conclusion, however, that I just called all of us planet fucking hypocrites too, because it's important, because we are, and you're designers and you want to make a difference, so difference starts with you. Good. All right, anyway, you can do this for the world. Turns out my 18 kilowatts is bad, but people who live in Qatar are worse. The US average is 11 kilowatts, 11,000 watts. Anyway, basically, if you look at this, you reach the conclusion, if you're European, that you're better. No, you're not. Europe has been around longer. The towns are denser. The population density is higher. The distances between the cities are lower. There's shared walls because the vernacular architecture is shared row houses. They're actually just as bad as we are, but they lucked into better infrastructure. I didn't realize that I was going to make that point and tie it back to infrastructure. That's sweet. Okay, missed that slide. Okay, this is how old this data is. This is 2004. This is China using 1,500 watts, so less than a tenth per capita of mine and yours. They've actually really gone gangbusters recently in a bad, good way. And then in green over here, this is India. This should scare the bejesus out of you. This is 2-something billion people using a tenth or a 20th of the your power, all wanting to live your life because you set such a good example via Hollywood and YouTube. Change starts at home. I'm going to skip that slide. All right. People think it's all about little things, light bulbs, all the stuff that we were told. Buy bamboo, that's good sustainable design. That's bullshit. I mean, bamboo is better than some things, but making more disposable stuff and just material substitution is not enough. The real point, so here's where I used to think it was all about details. And this is actually super useful if you want to make a difference. You can be like, I should replace all of my newspapers with a subscription to Amazon Kindle. Is that what that's the Kindle's theirs, or the iPad? Shockingly, Apple might get the environmental award for making the iPad, and then you get all your media there so you're not buying dead wood. So actually, curiously, that you need to think at that level to figure out huge changes. So actually, by getting the New York Times on my iPad was one of the biggest changes on my chart. Anyway, so you can make some substantial changes by that type of, I hate using the word design thinking because I think design is actually just thinking, so it's thinking. I recoil at the thought. I'm not going to say anything bad about IDEO. Anyway, if you just think about it, you probably can reach some more good conclusions like that. But they're just the tiny little, we do need all the little things to add up, but what you need to do is work on the giant things. And for the observant of you in the audience, this giant thing is my tax dollars at work. So step one, you don't pay taxes. That's actually, I'm not a libertarian, I'm not a Republican, and I'm not a Democrat. I don't know what I am. Go Bernie. I don't, actually, I'm not a citizen, so I don't vote. But, which is just, it's a convenient political let-off. I can tell this joke in any audience. It's a different punchline. Go Trump. Whoa. Bold. Okay. Okay. I've completely lost my train of thought. It's the toupee. It just dominates your thinking. Infrastructure. It's all about the infrastructure of your life. So you can obsess about these, make little differences. But you actually really have to change the infrastructure in your life. It's the decisions you make infrequently. If you think back to the thing I said, 30% of your energy is transportation, 30% is your housing, 30% roughly is industrial activity. Industrial activity means making all of the crap of our consumer civilization. You need to change that the infrastructure of your life. Just the same way we need to change the infrastructure of the world and go to solar and go to wind and go to everything, you need to change the personal infrastructure. So what do I mean by that? I live on Bernal Heights. My house is 0.9 miles from my office. So by doing that very conscious choice, although now it's getting hard to live in San Francisco because of absurd real estate, but different point. But because there's 1 mile between my office and my home, I am not necessitating the behavior in my life of a 1-hour commute over 50 miles and burning all those fossil fuels. We wanted to choose, we went with the San Francisco public schools system. They run a lottery. We got our 7th choice in the lottery. 50% of parents, those assholes, got their first choice. Anyway, we got our 7th choice. Commodore Sloat, which is actually an amazing school. My wife's grandfather went to the school. The principal is the very Principal Gregory John. He should be the public speaking face of a renewed and rejuvenated American public education system, but it's 4.9 miles from my house. So now I ride my bike over there every day with him, and my wife picks him up in the car every day. So the policy of San Francisco, which was to clean up, or to make a more egalitarian school districting, actually makes us burn way more fossil fuels because it was an infrastructure decision. The point being, basically, if you really want to make an enormous change to your life, you don't buy the Tesla first. You make sure your house is really close to your office, is really close to the playgrounds and the schools, is really close to the bodega. So you don't get in your car, like New York City, there's a bodega, like the grocery store is 60 feet below you, right? In our case, it's 200 feet down the street, but it means that you don't have to do all those repeat trips for milk. And that sense, that infrastructure of life makes an enormous difference, but then it makes you start to think about things like San Francisco school districting. All right, I'm going to segue, but not exactly. I'm a car nut. Absurdly, I hate cars because they're destroying the planet. I love driving cars. Oh my God, I own a 1963 Land Rover, put a turbo diesel in it. I have a 1959 Volkswagen dune buggy that I just restored. It has a 165 horsepower Type 4 Porsche engine. It is so much fun. I like going to monster truck rallies more than Burning Man. I'm serious. Anyway, that's another story. Okay, 1959, astounding car. This is the original Fiat Cinquecento, Fiat 500, 479cc engine, hence the name. It weighed 1,100 pounds, 500 kilograms, 42 miles per gallon in 1959. 2015, we have the, woo! We achieved so much as a civilization. 2015, Fiat 500 weighs 2,550 pounds and gets 28 to 34 miles per gallon. 1960 Mini, oh my God, my father owned this. I learned to drive when I was 8. It was so small. As an 8-year-old, I could reach all of the pedals and drive. I literally learned to drift before I knew how to do all the traffic signaling stuff, right? Thanks, Dad. Don't tell my mother. If you're recording this and my mother sees it, don't throw my dad under the bus. Okay, 1,400 pounds, 42 miles per gallon. Giant achievement in humanity, 2,800 pounds, we double its weight, 28 to 34 miles per gallon for the modern Mini. Volkswagens, it's the same. We went from 40 miles, we got worse. Of course, all these cars got safer. I own one of these. It didn't make a huge difference, but it did gain 1,000 pounds, right? And got a little bit worse, but not a whole lot worse. So this is the point that we think about the roads as infrastructure, but it's actually all of our choices in these things as infrastructure. As a species, we chose safer, bigger, more cups, cup holders. And so our infrastructure is now really badly designed for being energy efficient. This is my favorite. This is the Citroën de Chevaux. The French president was involved in the design of this, because Hitler had asked Porsche to design the Beetle. So the French had to have something as good or better than the Beetle. I think this is better than the Beetle, even though I own the Beetle. You can tell the car nuts because they giggled just then. So they went to such extremes to make this lightweight that the roof was canvas, not to be a convertible, but to save weight. The seats were hammocks, right? There were no wind-up windows, they were slides, because then you didn't need to have the mechanisms. This thing was incredible. 375 cc's. That's like an engine you can put in your hand, all right? 1939, the design brief from the French president was it should be allowed to drive over unplowed fields carrying 4 peasants with a load of eggs and not break the eggs, right? What a passionate design brief is that? We have lost... what was the president who gave all the money to Tesla? What was his design brief for the Tesla? Make a car for privileged rich people and subsidize it more than cars for poor people. Or something. The Tesla is an astounding achievement. It is a good news story, but we could have done better. We could have done the electric de Chevaux, right? That's the point. And so politics has to be involved in the decisions of what the shape and the color of the world is if we want to do a really good job. This is my commute bike. This is an electric bicycle. It's completely illegal because cars can have as much power as they want, but we limit the electric power in electric bicycles because we wish to discourage it. We wish to give electric vehicle owners $7,000 federal rebate, but we will not give you a rebate on your electric bicycle, right? We are choosing and electing the wrong infrastructure for the world we are entering. Also, it's enormous fun. This is my son. He's cool. They're his friends. They're even better because your own kids kind of treat you tough. Parents will know that. All right, so this is where we go to the whiteboard, I think, quickly. Numbers, more pictures here. Okay, so the Tesla gets 400 watt-hours per mile. Can everyone see that? Okay, I was told I wasn't allowed to move it. Okay, 400 watt-hours per mile. We're going to use that number. Big. Yeah, okay, great. There you go. We're in trouble. Don't call me chicken. 400 watt-hours per mile is the honest measurement of the energy consumption of a Tesla. The dishonest one is the EPA that gave it 100 mile per gallon equivalent. That is 100 mile per gallon equivalent is true if you're running it basically from solar cells on your roof. If you're running it off the grid is, you only get about 1/3 efficiency of the grid. It's majority powered by nuclear and fossil fuels, so you're getting about 1/3 that if you're powering it off your wall charger, okay? Anyway, let's use 400 watt-hours per mile because in the future there's going to be so much solar, it will in fact be 400 watt-hours per mile, and wind, and all the others. But 220 watt-hours per mile per person, which I think is a really interesting statistic. So New York City subways do better because they have higher ridership. As the population densities of cities go down, this number goes down because it's harder to fill the carriages. A golf cart, 100 watt-hours per mile. Neighborhood electric vehicles they now get about 100 watt-hours per mile. That bicycle, 15 to 25 watt-hours per mile. If I put 5 people on that bicycle, that's 5 watt-hours per mile, right, per passenger. If I put 2 people in a Tesla, I get 200 watt-hours per mile. That's actually a really interesting story. So you now have to consider, and I never thought I would say this, I'm super pro public transport, I love public transport, but in some energy sense, we're on the cusp where maybe everyone in electric cars, if they're charged by solar, is more efficient per person if you get ridership above 1 per vehicle, or if actually give everyone a free electric golf cart and we're twice as efficient as trains and way safer because the golf cart can only do 35 miles per hour, and so MV squared is low. It didn't write that equation, but I slipped it in. And I think this makes you look very differently at how we are all by default choosing, well, not even this good version of the infrastructure right now, but if we go to, I think the reason to really emphasize this one, we're right on the cusp of autonomous cars, okay? Very rarely do you get the opportunity to redress transportation infrastructure. Now imagine you go to autonomous cars. Autonomous cars, if we are good at building them, won't hit each other very often, and they'll be safer, which means they could get you there. You're waving that 5 minutes. I know I'm way over time. I will totally go there, though, under 5. But it must mean I was boring on this slide. All right. The point is, right now, we're going to choose autonomous cars, probably, that look like some substitute for what we already have. Big, giant, 5-seater cars that only ever have 1 person in them, that go at 80 miles per hour where they use way too much energy. Whereas we could, if we choose that new infrastructure of autonomous cars, and they're all golf carts that get you there at 35 miles per hour, which is roughly 3 times the speed. So you might think that golf cart is slow, but it's 3 times as fast as your average commute, right? It's lightning. It's the best transportation thing we've ever had. And this is even better. Look how many kids with ice cream you can put in it. So I think it's really interesting to think about infrastructure like that. And for the first time, and I'm really trying to draw this connection, the word infrastructure is typically all about big civil infrastructure, but I think we need to understand that we are all participants in the big civil infrastructure and the decisions in our own lives, like the size of your house, how far you are from work and from school, which vehicle you elect to choose. Those infrastructure decisions, they are permanent changes in your energy things. They're not like the bamboo substitute. Next year you'll go back to a plastic toothbrush because you find you got the splinters. Those of you who have used the bamboo toothbrushes will know what I'm talking about. All right, super quickly, wrapping up, 3 minutes or less. We got, I used to give this talk and say we had 43 years to solve the problem. That was in 2007. Now we've got 35 years to solve the problem, roughly. So anyway, we're getting less. So we got less than 40 years. What this is actually saying is that in 1965, humanity used 5 terawatts of power. This is ignoring the agriculture. That's why it's a lower number than 18. And in 2005, we were using nearly 15. So we did 10 terawatts of new infrastructure in 40 years, right? We actually can do it. We should be able to do 20 terawatts, which is roughly what we need to replace to accommodate population growth, increasing demand in the third world, and etc. But we cannot make one single infrastructure mistake, decision mistake. Okay, so like starting today, and I'm going to implore all of you designers, because you may not think about the things you're doing as infrastructure, but hopefully tonight I'd make you think about the collective action of the things that you design being an infrastructure and cultural choice of humanity, right? And our culture is actually our strongest infrastructure, I think, is a really interesting observation. Anyway, what are these horribly technical looking charts? These are technology replacement curves. Ignore the top one for now, look at the bottom one. So this is 2010, this is 2060, that's 50 years. I have the most beautiful 2-year-old daughter. I have a video that I wanted to show of her dressed in pink is doing her ninja moves. I want the world to be really good for her, and I'm imploring all of you as designers to make it so. If you don't, I'm coming after you. 50 years. All right. So this blue curve is the adoption rate. So imagine there's a new technology like electric cars. And in 2015, that's about now, everyone who buys a car, roughly 5 or 8% buy an electric car. That's what that adoption rate's. If everyone bought an electric car today, right, it would be 100% adoption rate, and this would look much different. But because cars on average last about 15 years, the green one, right, if we only have a 5%, it's going to take us fully 50 years to change all of the cars. Right? So this is to argue that we need to make products that are so astoundingly good and really, really good in their first or second generation, not in their third or fourth generation, because we need the best product, the right infrastructure to be purchased first time, and by way more than 5% of people, like by all people. And the longer the resonance time of the product you're designing in the industrial infrastructure, in our culture, the more important it is to make the right decision next week. So if you're designing toilet paper, it doesn't matter so much because there's going to be a million evolutions and generations. That's a terrible example. That was the beer speaking. Anyway, if you design power plants, 50 years, and, you know, by the way, 50 years, we design our civil infrastructure, our public transport systems, and the replacement rate is 50 to 100 years. We have to get that right now, and that's why I say this heretical thing that Teslas might be better than BART, but golf carts are way better than Teslas. Anyway, I really want you to, don't fuck it up. You have to make the right decision first time, every time for the next 50 years. All right? I can't remember, this is the distribution. This is to say that all of our travel, this is the histogram from the National Road Transport Survey of all of our miles traveled. The 40% of all of our vehicle trips are less than 10 miles, right? 50% are less than 14 miles, I think that's the threshold. This is whatever. Anyway, this again reinforces it is about being local. We now have the science to say it's local. Occasionally the California hippies get it right, they get the headline right 15 years before they know why. They got it right. It's about local. There we go. How'd I do? Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.